Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Writers Unscripted podcast brought to you by the Los Angeles Screenwriting Competition. If you are a writer, we want to hear your story. So make sure you submit to the festival and get seen, get read. This episode, we have the amazing storyteller Leon Chills on with us. Leon spent 2 years working on Wall Street, and the repetitiveness and the mundane work of corporate America drove him to discover his passion for screenwriting. Since then, he's gone on to tell stories across multiple platforms. He's worked on Spinning Out on Netflix, The Wilds on Amazon Prime, and he sold his first movie. You will see it in theaters May 9th, called Shadow Force, starring Kerry Washington and Omar Sy. Let's give a big welcome to Leon Chills. Hi,
Thank you, thank
Leon.
you, thank you. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. Now, your resume is more vast than I mentioned. What are some of the highlights for you, or some of the things that I didn't mention? I want you to toot your own horn.
Well, the highlight is definitely Shadow Force, which you did mention, which is in theaters May 9th, because the biggest dream that I've had has always been to write movies. So for a movie to get produced and be coming out in theaters is definitely, the biggest highlight for sure. But I
Absolutely.
also really enjoy writing comic books. I co-wrote all of the comic books behind me with Reginald Hudlin. It pays the least by far, but it's one of my favorite things to write because the turnaround is very quick compared to everything else. So we will write a script, send it to the artist, and like 2 or 3 weeks later, he's sending us what he's drawn for the panels. And it's just amazing to see, the work come to life so quickly with, TV and streaming. It's like 2 years after you write the script, it comes out. With the movie, it may never come out.
Right.
In the case of Shadow Force, it's 6 years since I sold it. I sold it in 2019. So yeah, it's a lot of waiting for everything else. And so for comics, I really enjoy how quick it can be.
Well, I'm going to mention the name of the comics that you've written for are Icon and Rocket and Icon versus Hardware. So you guys go out, get those comics so Leon can get that check from that too, because he put in a lot of hard work from that. So you said it took you 6 years to sell this movie. What were some of the steps that you had to go through, in addition to making those connections to get this movie sold?
So it took 6 years from when I sold it to when it came out in theaters.
Okay.
And then it took 8 years for me to sell my first movie. I started
Whoa.
writing in 2011 and this sold in 2019. And I had a very do-it-yourself approach. I didn't go to film school, so a big part of it was just tapping into my network. Anyone I knew in entertainment who could get their hands on a script for me. Uh, it was kind of before they were kind of all over the internet. That's a good thing about now is that most scripts you Google are probably on the internet and available. Um, I've read only read 4 books on screenwriting. I read Gotham Writers Workshop because I was living in New York at the time, and they had like a
Mhm.
class in New York. Save the Cat, um, Pixar Storytelling, and The Anatomy of Genre. So I would say, obviously recommend those 4 books, but the best education for sure is just reading other scripts, both good and bad. The bad ones, you'll be like, I never want to write something that makes someone bored and feel like I feel right now reading the script. And then obviously the good ones, you just want to try to replicate, how that feels and it being a page turner and being well structured and things like that. So yeah, I co-wrote a script originally with a friend of mine and it optioned in 2013 and nothing ended up happening with it. But it was at least a sign for me that I was on the right track. And so I quit JP Morgan, moved to LA in 2014. And once I moved there, I started applying to all the TV writing programs while also continuing to write movies. So I was writing a pilot, a spec pilot, and a movie a year. Those first 4 years, never ended up getting in any of the TV writing programs. But 4 years after moving to LA is when I sold Shadow Force.
That's still amazing. There are people who have been here for 20 years still just trying to get that one script done. So
Yeah.
what is a script that you read that kind of inspired you, that moved you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the one that kind of really turned things around for me was a script for Hell or High Water, which is like this Western. It was written by Taylor Sheridan, who's gone
Hmm.
on to, like a bunch
Yellowstone
of
and all
stuff.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But before I read that script, I was kind of convinced that the way for a script to be considered good was that it needed to have like this huge ensemble cast with a bunch of twists and turns and like complicated plot. I thought that was synonymous with a good script. And then I read that script and there's like four characters, super simple, very character driven. And it was just like, and it's amazing. It was an amazing script. I think it was nominated for an Oscar and didn't have all of that other stuff that I thought had to be in there for it to be good. And so ever since reading that, I just been keeping it simple and character driven has always been the most important ever since that. So Shadow Force really initially just was the two leads and their son.
Hmm.
And that was like it was about getting you invested in those characters and their journey versus trying to do a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's worked really well for me, writing uh character driven screenplays.
I feel like typically we see from Black writers and producers, the first foray that we see them is, and maybe not, it's not the first thing that they've done, but the first thing that we see, as consumers, is a comedy. What made you want to do an action movie? I find that so interesting to me because I think that usually starting out, writers feel like they have to do something kind of minimalistic just to like get their foot in the door. And action is not minimalistic at all. Like you got stunts, you got pyro, you got uh weapons, and this one, with the focus being on the characters being a family, like what made you want to do, what inspired you to do that?
Yeah, so that brings to mind two different things. So I'll answer the first question. As far as action is concerned, that's where my love for movies comes from.
Mhm.
My parents divorced when I was younger, and the way that I would primarily spend time with my dad is us going to the movies on the weekends. And 9 times out of 10, it would be like, a John Claude Van Damme movie or Schwarzenegger or Stallone or, Wesley Snipes, Jackie Chan, Jet Li. So
Mhm.
I have a emotional connection to action movies because that was the time that I got to spend with my dad. And as a writer, it's for me just about also adding, some emotionality and vulnerability to it as well, because that's oftentimes missing in the action genre. Um, so it was always the thing that, when you say write the movie you want to see, it was always going to be action. But right before I sold Shadow Force, I had written that low budget movie that I thought was going to be the one to get made because I purposefully wrote it so that it was low budget.
Mhm.
And it still didn't end up happening. And at that point, I didn't know what to do. And luckily, Black Panther came out, and that just kind of restored my hope and faith that if I wrote a big action movie with black leads, that it could actually, happen. If there's one thing that's a fact about Hollywood is that they try to chase the success of other movies, and so that came out, and I just was like, I'm gonna go for it, and that ended up being Shadow Force.
Mhm. That's Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I feel like Black Panther served as inspiration for a lot of especially black writers and artists in general. With Shadow Force, what do you feel was your biggest obstacle with getting it done?
um, I mean, I think that aspect of it being a big budget with a predominantly black cast is always going to be an obstacle, because there are going to be people who believe that isn't going to make money. Um,
Mhm.
so when I first sent it out through my agents, it was like 30 or more rejections in terms of producers, uh, seeing if producers wanted to come on board. Luckily, I knew Stephen Love, who's also a Morehouse alum and a producer in Hollywood, and he understood what I was trying to do. And with him, I was able to develop the script more and go through notes. Um, but one thing we kept getting was that there was too much mythology. Like originally, it was like the Romeo and Juliet of the assassin world. There was these fake organizations and all this. It was a lot going on in terms of mythology. So I will admit, even though it was like simple and
Mhm.
character driven, there was a lot of mythology to it. And so that was the biggest obstacle. And then from there, I decided to strip it down and make them ex special forces, which is where the name Shadow Force comes from, which is the name of the unit that they used to be a part of. And so because that's grounded in reality, it was a lot, I think it was a lot easier for people to kind of understand.
Now, grounded in reality, I feel like that is so important. My training, I went to the Second City, and when it comes to improv, that was kind of the basis of their training being grounded in reality. So I feel like your work will reflect that. Um, where do you pull inspiration from that? For that, I should say.
Um, yeah, it was really, I mean, you see, I mean, if you've seen a Hollywood action movie, you've seen the ex special forces thing. And it's
Hmm.
because probably of the obstacle I ran into, which is if you try to do something that's too original, they are already fearful and then they just become more fearful that there's nothing to kind of compare it to. So, ex special forces is it automatically they intrinsically come with the skills that you associate with an action star or with an action character, right? Because they were in this unit, they know how to shoot, they know how to fight. So it kind of just is a shorthand, quick way to get the audience up to speed with why they're able to do what they do.
Hmm. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit because I think that when you're in one world, you find other worlds so interesting. What was working on Wall Street like? We see the movies, Boiler Room, things like that. But I feel like sometimes it's rare to actually talk to somebody who has experienced it. Like, Leon, were you actually a finance bro?
No, I mean, I had a unique experience. I majored in computer science in college. And so
Okay.
at JP Morgan, I was on the tech side of things. So it was like, I guess the version of it that you don't see,
Okay.
which is like the developers who are coming up with the apps that those finance bros use
Hmm.
to, buy and sell stocks. So I was a project manager. I was like the liaison between the business side and the developers. And I would just see projects through from start to, finish. Kind of what a producer is in movies is what I was at JP Morgan. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, my hours weren't like super crazy or anything like that. It was like, 9 to 6 or whatever. It was more so just feeling like was meant for more than just, sitting at that cubicle. That led me to like that quarter life crisis of refining my love for writing and storytelling and all of that. More so than it just being like super difficult.
Are we gonna get a finance film out of it? Maybe.
I think one of my favorite shows right now is Industry, which
Hmm.
is on HBO and is set in that world. And I mean, I don't think I could do it better than that. I mean, I feel like they do it really well. I don't really have any interest in being creatively in that world
Hmm.
myself, but I do like to watch that show. Um, I don't think I would be able to give it the level of authenticity it needs just because I was on that opposite side. I think my way into it would actually be like a workplace comedy version of it because it was the side that you never see
Hmm.
at one of those kind of companies. I was working with like developers in Mumbai and things like that, so I think that would probably be my way in, which would be kind of interesting because you just never see that side of those kind of companies.
Do you feel that working on that development side helped you with preparing and selling Shadow Force?
I think working in corporate America gave me the work ethic that a lot of writers are missing, a lot of artists in general probably, because I it trained me, to wake up in the morning, go to work every day. So
Mhm.
I'm used to that. Now I apply to my writing. I wake up early in the morning and start writing. And because I was at JP Morgan, I had to write outside of work. And so
Mhm.
I would wake up a little extra earlier to write before I went off to JP Morgan. So I think working in corporate America just really gave me the work ethic that sets me apart in terms of being able to um, have the volume of scripts that it can take to finally have one that hits.
Mhm. So, what can you tell us about Shadow Force in theaters May 9th?
Yeah, I mean it's a very dope action movie starring a mom and a dad who have their differences but are forced to put them aside in order to protect their son. And through the journey of protecting their son, they may or may not rekindle their love for each other.
Mhm.
It's got romance. I mean, of course, it has action, but it also has romance. It has dramatic moments. It's got humor. Divine Joy Randolph and Method Man are very funny in the movie. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's got it all. It's a crowd pleaser for sure.
Absolutely. And were you on set during filming?
I actually didn't get to go to set, unfortunately. They
Oh,
were
no.
shooting in Colombia, and
Mhm.
I mean, I would have paid for myself to get out there, but with film, I guess it's not in TV like the writer is king, they say, and in film the director is king. So it's
Mhm.
never guarantee with a film that the writer will get to go to set. Uh, so yeah.
So, were you in I know sometimes writers are very precious with what they write with the words. Did they create an environment where you felt that your script was safely being produced and put on film?
Yeah, I mean, because I knew Stephen Love well, I could
Hmm.
trust in him that he would kind of shepherd it enough that it didn't change too much. Um, but otherwise, if you don't have a really good relationship with the producer, I mean, you kind of after you sell it, I mean, they have the right to do whatever they want to it. Like
Hmm.
you get the check for it, and after that, they can do whatever they please. So I think I got lucky in that I was a fan of Joe Carnahan, who came on board. Uh, Even before he did this, I was a fan of his action movies in the past, and he has kids, and he just brought that real life parenting experience to the direction of the movie, and luckily it just worked out. A lot of time, I mean, you hear those horror stories of like people selling the script and then it just completely changing to the point where they don't like it
Hmm.
anymore. But luckily for me, that wasn't the case this time.
So you mentioned that, once you sell it, it's like theirs to do with it what they want. How did that affect you, like
Yeah,
emotionally?
yeah, that's a good question. Initially, as a people pleaser, I was kind of so the process was I sold it, and then a part of my deal was that I got to do a rewrite based on their notes. So I guess it's called a two-step deal or one-step deal. And I got their notes after I sold it, and I did the rewrite. And my hope obviously was that I would have been able to stay the sole writer on it because they were so impressed with the rewrite. What ended up actually happening is that they got the rewrite, and then they hired Joe Carnahan to also add to the script. And initially, the feeling as a people pleaser was that I just let everyone down. I
Mhm.
wasn't able to accomplish the goal of being the sole only writer to ever touch the script. But the more I talk to people in the business, my manager and just other writers, for studio movies, it's very common for it to have gone through like 5 or 6 different writers.
Right. Yeah.
So for it to only be me and Joe was actually a good sign that it was actually a good script, and it could have been, much much worse. So for this first one, I'm just grateful. I mean, that it got produced and now it's actually coming out is just like I'm just like I said, I'm just grateful. In the future, I do have plans of becoming a writer director because I do see that is the only way to protect, your vision and your words 100% is that
Hmm.
you direct the script that you write. But no, for this one I'm just happy.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge accomplishment. You should be. So those 8 years trying to sell the movie, what was that like? Because I know life was going on as well. It wasn't just this selling this movie, but life was happening too.
Yeah, so this script specifically only took like I wrote it in 2018 and then it sold in 2019, which is pretty
Hmm.
fast. But there was the 8 years of development on my writing abilities that was taking
Hmm.
place in between all of the other scripts that I wrote that didn't sell, where I was, continually getting better and better each time. Um, but it was, yeah, life was after I got to LA. I mean, it's like my favorite movie ever is The Matrix, and it's got the red pill, blue pill, obviously. And after he takes the red pill to live in the real world, it's like it's trash. Like his clothes suck, the food sucks, and all that.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like when I first got to LA after leaving JP Morgan. Like the paychecks from them are gone now, so the food
Right.
the food I'm eating
Right.
is less desirable. I don't even have money to shop to buy clothes, to shop. So that was the harsh reality up front. I was cold emailing people, assuming that they would be impressed by the fact that I worked at JP Morgan, and they were not.
Hmm.
Because I was just trying to get an assistant job, and people still weren't. It's that catch 22 where they want you to have already had experience in the business when you're trying to get the entry level position in the business.
Right. Yes.
So I ended up just getting a random job selling like studio space at this building for people to come in and shoot their movies. And from meeting a guy at the bar, like the most random thing. And did 2 years of that. And after that, I became Reggie Hudlin's assistant, which was the kind of job that I was, had been hoping for from the beginning. And that was just a crash course in learning everything about the business because Reggie writes, directs, produces both scripted and unscripted. I met Khalil at Showtime at the Apollo, which is something he produced, but he also like directed Marshall, which starred Chadwick
Hmm.
Boseman during that period of time. Produces the NAACP Image Awards. So I really like in that 2 years just got to literally see it every part of the business and meet a bunch of people. And I really learned from him the hustle, which he's been in the business 30 years, way more, successful than I am, and he's still waking up before I do,
Hmm.
to get after it. And so that's kind of where my mentality of always like continuing to write and just keep going and keep going, even if I have agents or whatever, just to always continue to keep working for myself, where that came from. Um, but yeah, like I said, around that time, I was feeling like it had been 7 years of writing, and I was ready to quit. And then was inspired by another movie to give it one more try, and it just so happened to be the one.
Hmm.
And I remember people telling me that it would take 7 to 10 years, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Nah, you don't know me. you don't you don't know my hustle." And then it took exactly 7 years before I became a professional, which first happened on that show spinning out for Netflix.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I think there's so much in between that time. I'm trying to if I should just say it all or not, but
You
I,
should say it all.
I guess one. So initially, while I was still at JP Morgan, I found this program that allowed me to intern at the Toronto International Film Festival. So I
Hmm.
took vacation days to go be an intern at the festival, getting people coffee and water. And while I was there, this is 2012. While I was there, I met an executive by the name of Ben Shields Catlin. He was the one who sent me that Hell or High Water script. Also, I met him in 2012, and then it wasn't until 5 years later, 2017, I run into him in the lobby of Netflix while I'm there for a meeting with Reggie,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Oh man, like you made the move, you did it, you did it. Like, what have you been up to? Have you been still been writing?" And because I had continued to write, I had, a script that I could send him. And it was like the dream scenario where like the morning after he read it, he was emailing me like, "This is amazing. Like, I want to send you out to some managers I know, et cetera, et cetera." And it was one of the managers who he sent me out to, who's still my manager today. And he got me hired on my first TV show for Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that alone is just a lesson in, I guess, one, patience and persistence, but two, it's just like it took 5 years after I met him for it to like become anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times we expect to meet people and for them to immediately help us when more often than not it's going to take some time, and it just you have to just continue to meet people and not expect things from them right away.
So when you're writing, we're big into comics over here.
Mhm.
Like we love comics, graphic novels. So when you're writing for the comics, and where do you find that spark of inspiration?
I think, I mean, across all the platforms that I've written for, I think the goal is to center Black characters and genres that they're normally pushed to the side in. And
Mm-hmm.
so comics is obviously one of those as it relates to superheroes. There aren't a ton of Black ones. And I got the opportunity to write for Milestone, which was created back in the 90s specifically to bring more Black superheroes into the genre. And so yeah, that was the inspiring thing about it to me, was that I got to write for these Black superheroes and kind of do whatever I could to um I guess just platform them and bring them back in the modern day. It was founded in the 90s, but it had been a long time before those characters had been written for. And so I was super inspired to bring them back to a new generation, and hopefully, just like the other ones, they get their own TV shows and movies and etc.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think that that aspect of writing in genre, knowing that the majority of the time the leads are white characters, and trying to do what I can to also add some Black characters into that mix.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to go back a little bit. You did mention your work ethic. What does a typical day look like for you?
Um, I read this book called The Artist's Way, which I would also recommend. That book isn't specifically about screenwriting, but I got it from an actor friend of mine. And it's kind of about like opening that right side of your brain, that creativity. And as a part of that, there was I guess this activity that it requires that you do, which is called morning pages, where you
Mm-hmm.
fresh out of bed, you go to a journal and just kind of write freehand whatever is coming to mind. And that ended up being or informing my writing process. So now I wake up at somewhere between 5 and 6 a.m., come to the computer, and that's when I do my best writing. It's just like before the day has worn me down, before I've been on my phone for too long. I
Scrolling through TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. I'm able to just with the freshest mind I possibly have, um, use my imagination to come up with stories and characters and all of that. And then now that I have kids, that usually lasts about an hour or two, and then then they wake up and I'm brushing their teeth and taking them to school and all of that. And I work from home, so I'll do like those errands and daytime activities and come back to the computer But the other good thing about starting in the morning is that even when you're not at the computer, your brain is like still working on whatever you had started that morning. Um, you're like going through the scene in your head. I'm jotting down notes in my phone of like, different lines of dialogue or different plot points or beats. Um, so when you start in the morning, you allow your brain to just work on it all day, whether you're at your computer or not.
And I, so for our podcast, we like to be kind of educational for writers. So I think sometimes people get in their heads about what they're writing. So for you, is it like when you get up and you're doing your morning pages, is it say if you wake up on Monday, you have an idea for a sitcom. Tuesday, are you working on the same idea, or do you allow yourself to like go to say like, okay, well Tuesday maybe the thoughts in my head are a drama or a thriller, or do you just consistently stay on the same like episode?
No, I definitely think it's best to let your mind wander during that period of time. It's later in the day where you can assess all of the different ideas and kind of more logically determine which one would be the best to pursue long term based on whatever the marketplace or whatever the one that you can come up with the most story for. But during that period, I think, yeah, just that's kind of the purpose of it, just to let go. Just
Hmm.
like don't overthink it, just get it all out and you'll be surprised by, what you come up with. But I think kind of naturally your mind will gravitate towards the idea you like the most or you have the most passion for, and
Hmm.
then it will kind of just start to overtake those mornings because you can't let it go. You just want to keep going on it and keep going on it. Um, but yeah, otherwise I wouldn't. It's meant to not police yourself. Basically, it's just like
Hmm.
getting the stuff out of your brain and seeing what you what stories you have to tell. Basically,
Okay. So going back to Shadow Force, how how was there one defining moment where you were like, I got this? Like it's sold, I already know, or like how did you get it sold?
well, the big thing that got it sold was getting rid of that mythology stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But even in addition to getting rid of the mythology, I really went line by line and just kind of made sure that no word was wasted. I um characterized the villains, I felt like, in a unique way, which is that in a suspenseful way, which is that
Mm-hmm.
the shadows, the people from their unit that are coming after them, they were described just by one characteristic that they had. So one was like red nails. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever the protagonists were in a place where someone had red nails, as a reader, you had to wonder if that was the assassin coming after them or just, a regular person with red nails. So I think that contributed to it being like a fun read. And the inciting incident of it, I think, is also something that people were very drawn to, which was the character of Isaac in the bank with his son,
Mm-hmm.
and then the bank gets robbed. And it's that classic scenario of he is someone who has these skills, but he's trying to keep them hidden. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like the ultimate situation where he can't let them stay hidden. Like he not only does he
Right.
have to protect the other people in the bank, but when his son comes under threat, he has to, defend him. And that's what sets off this whole journey of people coming after them is because he's been captured on the cameras in the bank and it's spread across the world. But I think that was a scene that a lot of people were like, and it comes, 15 pages in where people were really gravitated to it. And it's I think it's like a lesson in, like, we've seen banks been robbed, we've seen the guy who has skills and doesn't want to use them, but it was a combination of all those things that we've seen in a way that we haven't, that made it unique, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's another thing that I think is good for writers to try to do. Like, we are, at the mercy of being born a lot of 100 years after film has already existed, right? So there's a lot of stuff we can't even have the ability to come up with because it just existed before we were here. And so getting caught up in trying to be so unique of something that has never existed could get you in a situation where you're not writing anything because it
Hmm.
feels like everything has been done. But if you can just find a way to mix and mash things that have been done before in a way that they haven't been mixed up, it can lead to it feeling fresh.
What's one takeaway you want people to have from Shadow Force specifically?
um, I think, I mean, it's kind of just like love can conquer all. Um,
Hmm.
I think what sets this movie apart from others where there have been like kids in the movie and things like that is typically the kid is just like a prop essentially, or
Hmm.
they're annoying, like they're always complaining or like, things like that. I think in this you genuinely feel the love these parents have for their son. And then through that you feel the love that they have had for each other in the past and that the love that they could have in the future. And it's that love that leads to them wanting to protect each other, and and wanting to protect each other is what leads them to kind of solve their problems, so that they
Hmm.
can live a life free of the worry of threat. So yeah, it's like love is the answer.
Yeah. Now
um,
this is a star-studded cast, so I you write this movie, you sell this movie. I'm sure there are no doubts in your mind. Of course, you want it to be successful, but what was Leon, the I guess the consumer's reaction when Kerry Washington came on board?
it was amazing. I mean, it was like again those dream come true moments where I get the call from Steven and he's like, "Carrie's in." It's just like it's the moments that you literally dream of. Like,
Hmm.
obviously, people send scripts out to actors all the time. 9 times out of 10, you're not even gonna hear back. Uh, and so to be getting those calls of people actually coming on board, it was just like, yeah, it was the dream come true. Obviously, Carrie is one of the best actresses out there.
Hmm.
Has led one of the biggest TV shows ever, and it's
Absolutely.
exciting for her to have the opportunity to also show she's a movie star, and in a way that we haven't seen her before as an action star as well.
I was just about to say that. You took the words
Yeah,
out of my
yeah.
mouth.
So it was like, yeah, again, we thought about that moment of people seeing a trailer and thinking about like, okay, there are obviously people who have done this in the past, but who, when they see in the trailer, they'd be like, oh, like that's interesting, and like she's that because you haven't seen
Hmm.
her do that before.
And as a writer, how do you move past, I don't want to call it writer's block, but moments where you don't feel excited about the craft?
Um, I think any lack of excitement only comes from just like the business side of things being trash.
Hmm.
uh, it's just like it's one of those industries that like always talks shit about itself. Everyone is so dramatic. Like movies are over. People don't want to go to the movies anymore, and like streaming this and like uh, it's just like so much of it can be doom and gloom. That is what takes my excitement out of it. But I think I go back again to those morning pages. Like that is an opportunity to one voice those frustrations. It doesn't always come. It doesn't always translate to movie ideas or TV ideas. Sometimes it's just like venting, like a literal diary. Um, but yeah, I think that again, those morning pages or writing in the morning uh helps me kind of block all that noise out.
Okay. And so I just want you one more time to mention the books that you read for our writers that are listening now that are maybe, you know, feeling kind of stuck or at the beginning of their scripts.
So yeah, so it was writing movies, The Practical Guide to Creating Stellar Screenplays by Gotham Writers Workshop, Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, which is a
That's a
classic.
classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pixar Storytelling, Rules for Effective Storytelling Based on Pixar's Greatest Films by Dean Mavashatz. The Anatomy of Genres, How Story Forms Explain the Way the World Works by John Truby.
Okay. And The Artist's Way.
And yes, and The Artist's Way, which is not specifically about screenwriting, just about
Work.
artistry in general and just like, yeah, opening up your right brain, which was perfect for me at a time when I got it because I was at JP Morgan and had kind of lost all the creativity I had as a kid. And it kind of helps you open that back up. In addition to like the morning pages, it requires you to go on an artist date once a
Mhm.
week where you take yourself by yourself to the movies or to the museum or like something like that to just like allow you to consume art alone and take it in and let it inspire you. All of which I think are just good practices in terms of protecting that inner creative child that we all have.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today, Leon. Um, I want you to plug your movie the way you would want to plug your movie. Let them
Uh
know.
yeah, Shadow Force, May 9th, starring Kerry Washington and Omar C, Divine Joy Randolph, Method Man, the snack himself, Method Man.
Yes,
Uh
forever fine. It's
uh
actually frustrating at some. It actually gets frustrating because how does one maintain fine for so long? It's
exactly. So that
like get ugly or something, get a scar, do something, fall down some steps. I don't know, man.
he is not ugly in this. So you don't have to worry about that.
Great.
It's black love, black family, over everything. Family over
Mm.
everything. And yeah, it's the kind of movies we say we want to see, black triumph instead of black trauma. So go check it out.
We will be sat for Shadow Force May 9th.
Thank
Shadow Force
you.
May 9th, Shadow Force May 9th. Y'all
Yes,
go
and
out
I
and see it.
Mother's Day
Don't wait.
weekend. It's Mother's Day weekend. Take your mom to it. Uh
Exactly. Don't wait for streaming.
yeah, do
Don't be
not.
lazy. Get out the house.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Leon. It was wonderful talking to you. You can connect with Leon on social medias at I'm Chills, IMCHILLS. And he is really chill, you guys, as you can see. And thank you all for tuning in to Writers Unscripted, powered by the Los Angeles Screenwriting Competition. We will see you next time.
Thank you for having me.